They picked Akani up one morning, beat him soft like clay, and stuffed him down the belly of a waiting jeep. What business of mine is it, so long they don't take the yam from my savouring mouth? They came one night, booted the whole house awake, and dragged Danladi out, then off to a lengthy absence. What business of mine is it, so long they don't take the yam from my savouring mouth? Chinwe went to work one day, only to find her job was gone. No query, no warning, no probe, just one neat sack for a stainless record. What business of mine is it, so long they don't take the yam from my savouring mouth? And then one evening, as I sat down to eat my yam, a knock on the door froze my hungry hand. The jeep was waiting on my bewildered lawn, waiting, in its usual silence. Hi there, I'm Ben Campbell and this is 10-Minute Teaching. That poem was Not My Business by Niyi Osundare, famous Nigerian poet, and I really wanted to just read the poem to you at the beginning of the video so that you could really get the full force of this very emotional and, at the moment, quite relevant poem, I think. But this video is designed to teach you some things about the particular poems that we read, so what we'll be doing for the rest of this video is talking about some of the background information about Osundare and his poetry, and then we'll also be taking a bit more of a deep dive into Not My Business to see how it works and what kind of techniques Osundare has employed to make it such a moving poem. We'll start, as always, with some background information. Niyi Osundare is the poet that we're reading today. He's one of the most famous poets from Nigeria, and a lot of his poems really focus on the political issues that that particular country has had over the last few years, and it's his belief that particularly African poets cannot help but be political. That's one of the key themes that comes throughout all of Osundare's poetry. He's also a very experienced poet and student. He holds degrees of literature from various different countries, and today he teaches literature in the United States. This poem, Not My Business, deals with a very particular moment in Nigeria's history from 1993 to 1998, when the country came under the rule of General Sani Abacha, a rather tyrannical dictator. And during this period of time, there were many pieces of evidence that came to light about evidences of corruption, human rights abuse, political assassinations, and various other quite horrifying things that were going on in Nigeria during this period of time. And this poem tries to respond to that particular issue, and specifically, it responds to the issue of people not speaking out about this oppression, about this terrible situation that was happening in Nigeria at the time. And Osundare seems to suggest that if we don't speak up about tyranny and oppression, eventually it's inevitable that such tyranny will come to affect us personally. So let's take a closer look into the poem then and see if we can figure out how Osundare has managed to make it such a moving poem. So let's dive into the poem and see how Osundare has managed to create such a powerful emotional impact in the poem. The poem, as we'll soon see, seems to follow a very song-like structure. It has a few stanzas which focus on various different things which are happening in Nigeria, and then there is this repeated chorus, which we can see coming in the second, fourth, and sixth stanza. So we'll come to the chorus in a moment. Let's take a look at the first event that we see happen in the poem. The first stanza sets up the ominous theme that we will see running throughout the rest of the poem with the line, "They picked Akani up one morning." Already we have a contrast in the poem. The faceless, nameless they, this just completely unidentifiable group, and they're put in opposition to an actually named individual, Akani. So the individuals, the people that we can see, they're the ones being oppressed, but the oppressors, we cannot see them, and if we can't see them, if we can't name them, then we can't blame them. We can't place responsibility on them for the things that they are doing. So already that's setting up a really ominous tone. Then we see what they are doing. Beat him soft like clay. Horrible simile that we have here where the body of Akani is turned into an object. This is a process that we call reification, where humans are described as though they are actually objects. This has a couple of different effects. We can really sense that the group that is attacking Akani are very ruthless and very violent. But then in contrast to that, we get a sense that Akani is innocent. He is passive in the grammar of this sentence when he's being beaten by them. But also he's almost like he isn't even human anymore. He's being turned into an object, clay. And then we see him being stuffed down the belly of a waiting jeep. And now we have a little bit of personification here where the jeep, again, a kind of faceless, unidentifiable representation of the group that are doing these things. It has this belly. It's quite an ominous image. Again, it's almost as though this jeep is like an animal or a beast which has eaten up Akane. So we have a lot of contrast already in the opening stanza between the group that are doing these horrible things, who are faceless. We cannot point to them. We cannot make them responsible for what they do. And then the people who these things are being done to, these innocent people who are being turned almost inhuman in the way that they're being treated. Then we have the first instance of the chorus. What business of mine is it so long they don't take the yam from my savouring mouth? A yam, by the way, is a type of vegetable. So now the key idea of the poem is being set up. We have a personal viewpoint, mine. So we have this actual first-person perspective. And the feeling of this first-person perspective is that they don't want to get involved because they have their own issues. They have their own food. They need to sort themselves out. And so they're not going to worry themselves too much about what is happening to the other individuals that they can see, to Akane, for instance. And the rhetorical question, the fact that it's phrased as this question, really shows us that they don't really care. There's no sense that they feel like they should do anything to try and help the other people who this group are attacking. Then we get a second example of something else that this group is doing. They have arrived one night in a house to drag another individual, another named individual, Danladi, out off to a lengthy absence. This idea that they just vanish, these people just disappear. Again, it's just a they, faceless, no identity. We can't point to them, we can't make them responsible. There's nothing we can do in the face of this oppression that we're seeing in the poem here. And then again, we have the same chorus. Again, this isn't enough to make the speaker feel like they need to get involved, like they need to speak up about the oppression that they're seeing. Then we see the third and final victim, Chinwe. She goes to work to find again simply that her job has disappeared. It's gone. Again, there's no one we can blame. There's no one we can point to. These things are just happening. There's no sense that the individuals who are being oppressed in this way have any power or any recourse. And that's emphasized by the repetition of the word no in the third line of that stanza. No query, no warning, and no probe. Just one neat sack for a stainless record. Sack here might have a bit of an ominous double meaning. Obviously, to get the sack means to lose your job. But then there's also perhaps a sense that a sack is something that you would put a body into. Kind of like perhaps Danladi, who's been carted off, or Akane, who's been put into this jeep. One neat sack. There's a real sense here that the oppressors can do whatever they like to these people. And it doesn't matter what they do, what the individuals do. Chinwe, in this example, is described as having a stainless record. She has tried to act perfectly in the situation that she's in, but even that isn't enough. At any point, for any reason, the oppressors can do what they like to these individuals. And again, we have that chorus, and every time the chorus is repeated, every time that question is repeated, it only gets worse for us as the readers. We are screaming out that we feel like the speaker should help these people. But again, the speaker doesn't want to. The speaker just simply wants to help themselves. But then at the end of the poem, we see a change in form. No longer are we seeing another individual who something is happening to, which is separate from the speaker. Now it's the speaker himself who is about to be oppressed, who's about to feel the wrath of this tyrannical government. As he sits down to eat the yam, there's a knock on his own door. And we already know from the previous things we've seen in the poem what is about to happen. And so therefore the poet doesn't even tell us. He doesn't even tell us what happens to the speaker. We simply see a jeep waiting on the bewildered lawn. Bewildered lawn is an interesting phrase here. It's almost as though the speaker gives this sense that he never even expected that the government was going to come for him. But of course, as the reader, we know that was inevitable. It was inevitable whilst we were seeing all these other individuals affected by the government in this way. It seems obvious that the speaker himself was at some point going to feel that same effect. And so then we just have the repetition of this word, waiting, 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 in its usual silence. Very powerful end to the poem where we just realise fully what is going to happen to this speaker. And it's too late at this point. There's nothing that the speaker can do against the faceless group, which are going to be able to do whatever they like to him. And importantly, there's no one left who's going to necessarily be able to help him, just as he hasn't helped any of the other people who he has seen be affected by this government. Extremely moving end to the poem, and one which really, I think, gives us that sense that we have to speak up against oppression, because ultimately if we don't, oppression will eventually come to find us. Okay guys, that's the end of this episode of 10 Minute Teaching. Hope that you enjoyed that and learned something interesting. If you did like this video, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out some of the other videos on the channel. And if you have more things that you would like me to teach you in 10 minutes, then don't forget to leave them in the comments section below. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time.